Gunshot survivors of Reddit. What does it feel like to get shot? Story 1. 13 years ago at age 14 I was shot by a home intruder 5 times with a .38 revolver. 3 rounds hit my abdomen, 1 hit my left forearm, and the final hit my left thigh. I was woke up by commotion in the living room. I thought it was my sibling getting home late from a friend's house, so I went to get water in the kitchen. That's when the guy saw me, panicked, and proceeded to dump the entire cylinder of his revolver into me from 10 feet away. At first it felt like someone jabbing me with a hot poker, the most painful one actually being my arm right away. The ones to my leg and stomach starting to hurt far more after maybe a minute or two, not sure since the event felt like it took an hour from start to finish. My sense of time when it comes to remembering the shooting is very distorted to this day by what happened. The guy got away before anyone got to me. My parents were out of town, and like I said, my brother was out of friend's house. Luckily, a neighbor called 911 within minutes of it happening, and I was taken to the ER. It was during the ambulance ride that the pain really hit me. A sharp, hot pain took over me, every bump feeling like each spot was getting punched over and over again. Before they started operating to remove the 3 rounds still in my abdomen, it felt my guts were being torn out of me by hand. From there, I don't remember the next 5 days of my life. I fell into a short coma due to the pain. I was hooked up to more tubes than I could count when I woke up, giving me fluids, pain meds, antibiotics, sucking out stomach bile and other fluids to keep my digestive tract clear to heal. All there was pain-wise was a very dull pain everywhere. It hurt the most to breathe, each breath feeling like an intense pressure on my gut. From here, my memory is still hazy due to the amount of pain meds I was on to keep me calm. During the healing process, we found out I had developed Crohn's disease, which the doctors figure was lying dormant my entire life and only flared up due to the extreme stress my body went through in a short period. This caused my abdomen area to heal improperly, causing me to go through a long drawn-out ordeal with the disease before finally having to end up with a permanent colostomy setup. 13 years later, it's my reminder of what happened that night, why I now sleep with a handgun near me, wake up with night terrors of the event, and sometimes get scared if there's a noise in the middle of the night. The person who shot me was never caught as far as I know, and in the end nothing was even stolen from my parents' house. To this day I'm glad no one was home. I'm not sure I could live with a reality where one of my family was shot instead of me that night, or them having to find me after it had happened. Story 2. I took a 9mm to the knee around 7 years ago. Sound of the surprise gunshot stunned me. I didn't know I was immediately hit. I saw a hole in my pants and remember thinking that was weird. I tried to get up and move, and my left leg wasn't working right. I got to cover about 30 yards away and sat down to assess the situation. Felt like someone was shoving a fire poker in my leg. I saw an entry hole in my pants, felt around the back of my pants, and there was no hole. My leg and balls started to feel warm from what I was assuming was blood pooling from me sitting down. I quickly removed my pants and discovered the entry wound and no exit wound. There wasn't too much pain yet, just massive adrenaline and the beginnings of panic. I took my hoodie off and used it to apply pressure. I was in an ambulance within 15 minutes and given morphine. That ride to the hospital wasn't fun. Every bump felt like a really bad Charlie horse in my thigh. Once at the hospital, the pain was starting to get intense, and then the doctor and a couple orderlies came in. Remember thinking that was weird. Then the doc grabbed my wounded leg and started moving it around. That was the worst pain I have ever experienced in my life. After x-rays, the bullet had hit and cracked my femur all the way through right at the knee joint. I remember being wheeled into the operation room, and so high off meds I tried to move myself from the gurney to the operating table myself while joking. Countdown from 100, I was out by 97. 6 screws and a metal plate in my left leg. Spent 4 days in the hospital on morphine every 2 hours and hydro every 4. When they stopped giving me morphine, I literally had the shakes and sweats of withdrawals. Rehab was a bitch. 6 months of non-weight bearing and a lot of painful range of motion exercises. I'm lucky there wasn't much joint damage, and now, years later at 35 years old, it doesn't give me any real problems. Story 3. I was randomly shot while walking down the street with my girlfriend in 2013. I didn't fall to the ground or anything like that. Walked into a store and told them to call the cops. It didn't hurt too bad at first. A slight pinch. The heat builds up and the pain comes in. Some throbbing as the blood pumps out. I was extremely lucky as the bullet lodged between my lower right ribs in the back just above my kidney. The aftermath was a really achy back. What I remember most was how everyone around me except for my girlfriend just walked around us like nothing happened. I was suffering and potentially dying, and everyone just ignored it. Not my problem, I suppose. I lost a lot of faith in people that day. Story 4. I was shot with a .22 in the back. The initial shot hit my vertebrae and paralyzed me from the waist down. I literally just stiff-legged and fell backwards. I then felt a hot wave run down my back into my butt. Then the searing pain set in. It was excruciating and literally screamed and swore the whole time. When someone asks the level of pain I was in, I tell them to think of the worst pain they've experienced and times that by 100. The pain and realization that I couldn't move my legs was just heartbreaking, and I just wanted out. 3 years later and lots of intense physical therapy, I have gained a lot of movement and function back. I can walk with the aid of FOs and crutches, but still need a wheelchair at home and for long distances. Edit: to those asking why or how I was shot. I was on private property shooting with friends. We stopped shooting and I went downrange to change something. My friend decided that was the time to try and unload his .22 revolver, and as he pointed it downrange, he somehow pulled the trigger and shot me. I don't know what possessed him to do that, as even if the gun was loaded, nothing would happen if you don't touch the gun. But he did. Being in the middle of nowhere, it took about a half HR for an ambulance to come, then a life flight to the nearest hospital. I'm lucky the bullet hit the vertebrae as it stopped it from going into organs and bleeding out. Oddly enough, there wasn't much blood and wound management was very minimal. And yes, he is still my friend. I forgave him and he definitely has suffered mentally for it, and he doesn't deserve more pain either. Story 5. Got shot point blank in the chest with a .22 rifle. 2 people were arguing. I was 16 years old relaxing on a couch. They were 18, and to this day I thought I knew them, but I think they were up to some shady stuff when I was in the shower. 41 now, and I've thought about it many times. Anyways, the 2 were screaming at each other who's tougher. One said, "If you're so tough, shoot my name here." At that, he went in the room and grabbed the only gun we had along on the trip. We were shooting cans and left 1 round in the chamber. Only bullet we kept to line all the cans up on the log before we left and do 1 shot through 'em all. Pulled the trigger, I lost my breath, ears started ringing, and I was trying to get up, but it felt like a wet blanket was on my chest down to my legs. I looked down, and a half-inch from my heart was a tiny hole with 1 single drop of blood trail coming from it. Dude ran to a payphone and dialed 911. Ambulance was there in 6 minutes, which still amazes me, considering where we were. End result: bullet was lodged in my spine, removed it 2 days later, paralyzed in complete wheelchair-bound chest down. Story 6. Late to this, so this won't get seen. Long story short, it fucking hurts. For years, decades in my case, I was through the chest just below my heart. It exited through my back, cracking vertebrae. When the shots were fired, no one knew what had happened, including me. It sounded like someone lit firecrackers in the bar, and I thought some piece of that hit me in the chest. Felt like someone tapped me really hard in the middle of the chest. I was still sitting at the bar and apparently said to the woman next to me, "Did I just get shot?" before falling off the stool. I didn't feel much pain for a while as I was essentially dying, bleeding out on the floor, all those death and trauma chemicals in high gear. I was approaching death for the first time during this, and I felt like I was given a choice to live or die. When I chose to live, that's when the worst pain I couldn't even imagine started. I've always had a pretty high threshold for pain, but I was audibly screaming, which is apparently a good sign. In the ambulance, apparently I kept thanking them and telling them how much I appreciated them. They needed to inject a valve into my chest to release the pressure. They asked if I was ready. I remember I said, "Please, fucking do it." And when they did, so much pain was released. The next days were pain through my entire body. ICU, drugs, wake up to pain through my entire body, surgery, constantly thanking the amazing hospital staff, pain, and lastly, pain. I've suffered from chronic pain my entire life since, and I'm one of the lucky ones. I didn't die. I wasn't paralyzed. I didn't get addicted to painkillers. But I suffer from pain to this day, both physical and emotional. To this day, approaching 2 decades after the fact, I sometimes will just sneeze and it locks up my ribs that were broken, and it was the same type of pain I had in my months of physical recovery. Stuff like that really triggers my PTSD, and I'm useless, both practically and in my head. I can barely walk when that happens. Story 7. Right eye, .40 caliber hollow point blank range. I felt nothing but instant confusion. My ears were ringing and I could not form a cohesive thought. After I saw the gun barrel smoking, I finally started to realize I had just been shot. I wasn't sure where I had been hit, because you don't realize that you are currently blind in one eye because you see the look of horror on the person who just shot you's face perfectly fine with your one remaining eye. I looked down to see if there was a hole in my chest and only realized I had been shot in the eye when I began to feel around my face with my hands, only to have my fingers slip into the warm Jell-O cup that is now my right eye socket. Paramedics on the way. I fall to the floor and start throwing up a ton of blood. My friends are nowhere to be found as they have plenty of paraphernalia to dispose of before the police arrive. So I have the pleasure of wallowing in my own blood and crying out for someone to comfort me as I'm sure I am about to take my final breaths. After what feels like an hour, firefighters arrive. I inform them I have hemophilia factor 9 and promptly pass the fuck out. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more exciting Reddit stories. Consider checking out our other videos as well. It would mean the world to us.